Okay, so today what we're going to do is take on a step further, really, from where we've been on this journey so far, which is actually to think about how we make stitches and doing stitches in what has been a semi-prescriptive way, to now a little bit more free fall. And this is something that's come out of a project that some of you might have participated in when we used net as part of a garden theme. And I think that was back in, I seem to think it might be September last year, year before last, even, yeah, last year. So I thought, well, let's make it wintry. So in your pack, you have some organdy, which and some interfacing, and I'm also hoping that you've got the netting and so on. And what I've done is I've taken a picture that I found, and I've embroidered onto it by putting layers together. So I'm just going to go onto my little camera and just talk you through that. So can everybody see? Didn't get a chance just to, can you see that okay? Just need to, okay, right. So I went and had a bit of a trawl on the internet, and I found some quite interesting prints and photographs, and I thought, well, this is the one that I did, you know, kind of in Blue Peter style, which was just using the colours that I've sent you to create trees. And then this is my type of hair. Okay, I'm not sure they anatomically exist, but this is, yeah, little hair looking into the woodland. And what I've done is I've used a combination of different types of netting. So in your pack there was a little bit of shimmery netting, which has got a slightly bigger hole to it, and then there's some grey, and then there was some little bits of white. So just so that you could make yourself a netting sandwich. But before you do that, it's a good idea, and I'm hoping that's all happened, that you've found something that you really enjoy as a concept, and you've traced on the very outline. So can you see, if I just leave that there for a minute, there's little lines on there which I've used a friction pen to draw on. At this point, don't iron, yeah, until the very end, and that gives me some rough ideas of where I'm going to stitch. I'm not doing anything other than just giving it a rough tracing, because I quite like the composition. If you've got a photo that you really like, then again you could do the same. You know, you can take a composition of something, or part of a picture, and you could use technology if you've got it at home to enlarge it, and you can print it out and it'll give you some kind of a design that you quite like. And I think the thing with all of this is just to enjoy the process, because you're the only one at this stage who knows what this design looks like. I'm just going to say that and put it out there. So what I did to start with then was you can see where the little pins are on the picture that I've got. It's got like a moon, sun, I don't know. And I've cut myself a bit of glittery net, and I've done 2 layers of it just to give it a bit more depth, which I'm going to have as that moon. And I've just placed that on with a pin for now. And then I've, in the foreground, I've got a little bit of a darker colour here. So I've cut that and put that with some grey net underneath. And then on top of that, I've put a whole layer of white netting. So I've got little layers of this. And that's all you really need to do, is pin it then in place, because the rest of this is going to be something that you create from your stitching. And what we're going to use is a sort of combination of straight stitching and kind of like a stem stitch, to actually do some of the outlining. When I first thought about this project, I thought it's almost a little bit like, what would you expect in, do you remember those snow globes? You know, you shake them up, and it was that sort of feel I was thinking about. So something a bit wintry. So basically what we're doing is we're using the netting if you like, to create a bit more substance to the actual piece of work. And it allows us to kind of break down the area. So on the one I've stitched here, I don't know if you can see, I've got some glittery netting that I've been able to stitch over. So you get these little sparkly bits, you know, a bit like crispy snow, you know, it's that sort. So what you're doing is you're using the netting, if you like, to create a little bit of extra texture that's a lot easier to do with a bit of fabric that's fine than ever it is if you do it with embroidery. Yeah, so it's a fast way of laying down some background fabrics, really. And what I was also kind of suggesting is, here I've got my snowy kind of foreground going on here, so I've got that done in straight stitches, and I've used 4 strands of the stranded thread to do that. So in your pack you should have a whole packet of white stranded cotton, so you've got plenty to go at. And because that's the bit that's closest to me, what I've done is I've created that at its thickest that I think it works with, and me being able to still see my glittery net through it. And I've done the same here with the trees. So I've got a thicker strand. So I did 2 strands of these because they're slightly further back in my head. 2 strands of those that I've stitched in different colours to create texture on those trees. And then as it's gone up into the sky, I've gone down to one strand and then just let it disappear into the ether to give it that sense, hopefully, of depth, because that's what I'm looking for. And then at the top here, I've used some of the cotton perle just to stitch that top bit down, just to put a lid on the whole thing, make it feel more contained, so that, you know, in my head I was looking at this sort of snow, you know, are they called snowballs? I don't know, snow domes. Yeah, so I was looking at something like that. So this idea that was the top of the snow dome, and I've shaken it up, and I've got little bits of snow in there, and I've got little bits of different colours as a sort of wintry scene. Yeah, and that I think is also quite useful to think about as well. You know, when you're going to do this, think about your palette of colours that you're going to use. So get yourself a palette together and stick with that. Don't try and incorporate absolutely everything with it. Just take a few lighter and darker colours, so that you know that they're all going to look nice together. So you can lay them out side by side and just double check it all fits with what you're wanting to achieve. That doesn't mean to say that you're stuck then with those colours, because you can always introduce more into them, but it does mean that you've got the beginnings of something. And these trees here, I've got a combination of colours, so I've used a darker kind of navy colour, and then a sort of more Air Force blue colour. And just over on this side here, I've actually not finished that part there. That's how I set it up. I did little running stitches, which I'll show you in just a minute, which I'll then fill in to create this more textured looking bark. But I just followed my tracing lines that I'd done to create that. So I'm not doing anything too complicated, but I'm giving myself a shape that made it feel right for me. And I hope that, you know, is okay. So on the one that I'm just setting out doing here, so I can show you a bit more closely on those, it's a very different feel, because it's actually kind of like a cropped piece, isn't it? It's sort of like, you know, you're looking in on something with this picture, whereas that one, it feels like it's you're on the outside looking in. Just I think part of that comes out of the idea of doing it in a circle. So I didn't have it in a hoop or anything, I just kept it freehand. Now you've got in your pack some interfacing. I didn't put interfacing on the back of this, but do you know what? I wish I had, because it was quite difficult to keep it nice and flat. So I would suggest you do a lightweight interfacing, which is an iron-on one, just to give it a little bit more structure, and then it won't move quite so much. So can you see on here, I've got a very serious kind of bend occurring, and that's because of the amount of stitching that I've done on it, and it's pulled it in. and that wouldn't have happened quite as much if I'd used the interfacing on it. So just throw that in as a, you know, an option. If you haven't got interfacing, but you have, like Denise says, got a Bonder web, then there's nothing stopping you making yourself a sandwich with the Bonder web. So have some fine fabric and put the Bonder web in the middle, and that will give it a structure as well. Just be really careful with the Bonder web that you don't let it anywhere near the plate of your iron, because that's just not a good look. Yeah, so just be careful with that. So let's just get a little bit underway. So I want to, I'll come back to this one in a minute. This one here, can you see what I've done? Is I've done a series of little stitches, and these are running stitches, but I've put a very small gap between them. Can you see? And a longer stitch. So if I just, yeah. So the way I've worked it is I want there to be more of a line than less of a line. I don't want these stitches to be uniform. I want the gaps to be quite small, so it gives me more of a sort of sketching line. Yeah. So we'll just have a little look at doing that. And for this one, I've used a little bit of perlé, but you could, if you wanted to, just do it like you would do sketching, and just use one strand of the stranded thread, just to give you that idea of where you want to start. And it just, I think it kind of demystifies then, let's try and get that one a bit more, where you're going to go next. So if, just like you would in, you know, in drawing, you would kind of do yourself a little sketch and then go from there. Let's try and thread my needle. I think my hands have gone cold, so apologies.
How many layers are we supposed to be putting on? Does it matter?
It's entirely up to you. I've got, if you like, on this one here, I've got 3 layers. So I've got a layer that was just that wide, that was my glittery bit. I've got a layer in the middle that was grey, and then I put white over the whole of the top of it, over everything.
Yeah.
Yep. I think just play around with that and just see what's pleasing. Remember also that you're going to do a lot of embroidering onto this, so don't worry, it's not how it's all going to end up. If you're finding that you want to knock any of the colours back, there's nothing stopping you, and you've got enough stuff in the pack to put 2 layers on if you want to. So I'll just show you on this one here. So I've got the organdy at the back, which you'll have your interfacing on. There's my grey, and then there's the white over the top of it. And what that grey does, it just gives it, just knocks back the white a little bit, yeah, which I think is quite nice. And then on this bit here, where the glittery bit is, I've just got one narrow layer there, nothing too much, yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
That's okay. So in terms then of doing the actual stitch, I've used knots on the back of mine, and I've not worried about it. If you don't want to, then just do a knot that's further away, and then you can weave it in, cut the knot off, and then weave it in afterwards. And in terms of actually doing the stitch, then I'm going to just come up, and what I'm aiming to do is to do quite a long stitch actually, and then the smallest little pickup, and then go down a little bit longer, and then do a very small pickup. So it's like a rocking. And if I just pull this through, so you get more blue than you do the white in between.